All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this regular meeting of the Isla Vista Community Services District. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. And Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yeah, Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Here.
Director Bertrand,
Here.
Director Freeman,
Here.
Director Aguilar,
Here.
Director Topliff,
Here.
and Director Deshler.
All right. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anascoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community.
Spencer froze.
Relationship of mutual respect and understanding. With that, we will move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items that they wish to pull?
I'd like to move approval of the consent agenda.
Motion made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Flaherty. Any further comments from the board? Any comments from members of the public on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Deshler,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. We'll move to the public comment period. This is the time for any members of the public to speak on any matter that is not on today's agenda, that is within our subject matter jurisdiction. We will not take any action unless provided for by law, but this is the time. If you have off-agenda comment, please hit the raise hand button, or you can also put something in the chat or unmute and get our attention. Any public comments? All right, I'm seeing none. So we will close the public comment period and we'll move to our first discussion and action items. I think we're going to move item 4.1 towards the end of discussion and action items. And we will start with item 4.2, the Isla Vista Coalition for Healthy Communities 805 presentation.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Demi to present. Let me just give you the screen sharing.
Okay, great.
Here you go. Yeah, we're just to remind the board, I think it was in late 2017, maybe early 2018, we had voted to join this coalition. And so it's been a long time since, almost since the district started. And so we're getting a report from them, what they've been up to with the grant they got.
Okay. All right. I hope are you able to see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So thank you all for having me. My name is Demi Kane, and I am the project coordinator for the Isla Vista Coalition for Healthy Communities 805. I'd like to thank the board as well as IVCSD staff for having me here tonight. I'm sure that most of you probably have not heard of our coalition. So for those of you who haven't, that is exactly what I'm here today to talk about. I just am hoping to shed some light on some work that's being done within the Isla Vista community that is meant to serve our youth, our families, as well as the general community here. So I'll begin with going over our mission statement, which I have at the bottom of the screen there. The mission is to enhance the quality of life in Isla Vista and surrounding communities through education, collaboration, and programs that reduce high-risk substance use factors and increase resilience in children, young adults, and families. So from that mission, there's a couple of important points to note. The first is that emphasis on reducing high-risk substance use factors. So our coalition was actually previously known as the Isla Vista Alcohol and Drug Coalition. The name was changed though. However, even though we had our name changed, our focus overall is on youth substance use prevention. So it is very specific, but because we are focused on prevention, that means that we're not service providers, we're not treatment providers, we're not law enforcement or anything like that. This coalition is simply just made up of lots of different individuals and organizations within Isla Vista, but also within the whole county, who all want to achieve this goal of providing the best community that we really can for our youth, for all of the young adults that we have in this area, as well as for our families and longtime community members. We're all very much aware of some of the stereotypes and perceptions that people have of the Isla Vista community. So this coalition is hoping to align with some of IVCSD's goals of promoting a much better image of Isla Vista, which all of us actually know. So another important point from our mission that I'll mention is that focus on children and families. I actually work at the St. George Youth Center in Isla Vista, so we have a huge focus on youth and families, and a lot of the work that we do within this community is very closely tied with the youth center. So a lot of our focus is on advocating for our youth and families in Isla Vista, because all of you know already that Isla Vista definitely has been lacking advocacy, which is why we're so thankful to have a board like IVCSD. But we also know that some areas of our community are also lacking advocacy. And for us, that includes children and their families. So when it comes to issues of substance abuse and substance misuse, those are things that are running rampant really throughout our whole country. And without focusing on the youth that we have now, then we know that those issues are only going to continue. So our focus is just solely on prevention and really just making this community the best community that everyone here really deserves. So our service area on the next slide here is all of the 93117 zip code, but we have very special attention when you zoom in on the Isla Vista area and a good chunk of Goleta. But we definitely focus a lot on Isla Vista for the reasons I just mentioned. We know that if we're going to be focusing on an area where there's gaps in services for youth, and for families, that Isla Vista is definitely one of those places. So a lot of the efforts that we do involve really the whole county, but we also place we place special attention on our Isla Vista community here. So just some examples of some activities that we did really throughout COVID. I have some flyers up here because all of them were virtual and we didn't really get any pictures. But you can see over on the left, we work with Jill Sharkey from UCSB, who is our evaluator. And she helped us develop this survey that was distributed to 7th through 12th graders throughout South County, just to get an idea of what some of their perceptions and attitudes are around substance use. And then the flyer in the middle was for a Teen Connect series that we did in partnership with the Santa Barbara Youth Council. And that was a virtual series that focused a lot on just issues that teens have on their mind right now. You know, a lot of the focus was also on mental wellness and mental health. And then over on the right, there's a flyer for a partnership that we had with YouthWell, UCSB, SBCC, and CADA. And that was a workshop for the community that was just educational to talk about some of these issues around youth substance use, because generally it's a topic that not a lot of people like talking about, and also not a lot of people really know much about. So that's just some examples of things that we did during COVID. And I emphasize COVID because our coalition received a grant. It's called the Drug Free Communities Grant. And that grant we received in December of 2019, about 2 or 3 months before COVID hit. So once we actually had the grant, we were really, really limited in what we were able to do. The coalition was still kind of getting on its feet, finding some structure, solidifying some members. So up until this point, we have been very limited in the activities that we do. However, one way that we were able to really kind of revitalize the coalition's efforts and meet some of our goals was with the Isla Vista Teen Leaders. So this is a group that Jonathan and Spencer actually got to meet with a couple months ago. The Isla Vista Teen Leaders are 7th through 12th graders. Almost every single one of them is from Isla Vista. We only have about 2 of them that have since moved to Goleta, but all of these are youth born and raised in Isla Vista. And they're an amazing group of students who we'd like to focus really on community engagement, which is why they were able to meet with Jonathan and Spencer to learn more about all the work that all of you do. They also met with Supervisor Hartman, which you can see up in the top left corner there. And then over on the top right, that's a picture from a parks walk that we did over the summer with IVRPD's park ranger. And we pretty much just walked throughout almost every single park in Isla Vista to get them really out in some areas that they have never been, because even though they're from here, they usually stick to you know, the same couple areas throughout the community. And unfortunately, sometimes our families also, just because of the perceptions of Isla Vista, they don't always want their kids to be exploring the whole community. So that's one of those things that we really are trying to break, one of those barriers for them, to remind them that this is their community just as much as everyone else's community. So that also goes along with empowerment and advocacy, which we also work a lot on. Some of you may be familiar with a campaign that the St. George Youth Center had, which was called I'm a Student Too. It's something you can see when you go to Estero Park. There's some murals there, and there's a big mural of a girl, and it has that hashtag there. So that's just an example, that campaign, I'm a Student Too. That's an example of an effort that the Isla Vista Teen Leaders did a couple of years ago to really just advocate for themselves as students, you know, to not be overshadowed by the large population of all of our college students here. And then just to remind them, like I mentioned before, that this community is very much theirs. And, you know, they're born and raised here. So this community is very much theirs. And the Isla Vista Teen Leaders have been a really great source for us to pick up some of the activity that we were lacking during COVID. And we are continuing to develop some different projects with them that we'll be working on in the coming months. So lastly, I will just show you a couple examples of some of the partners that we have that make up this coalition. So the St. George Youth Center, of course, is very much involved. We're very involved with UCSB's alcohol and drug program, as well as different agencies in the county. So behavioral wellness, public health. We're also involved with Santa Barbara City College, which is great, IVRPD, Santa Barbara Neighborhood Clinics, KCSB, IVCSD, lots of different partners that we have collaborated with in the past before that we're hoping to continue collaborating with, and also hoping to bring into the coalition and become members. So ways to get involved with this coalition are really easy, because this is a community coalition. It is not a private group. There's not really any prerequisites for someone to join. It's really just for anyone, any individual, agency, or organization who is passionate about enhancing the well-being of youth and young adults within the Isla Vista community. So we have meetings the third Wednesday of each month at 3:30. You can attend one of our meetings just to come check it out, get an idea of what we're doing. And right now, I will also mention that we are formalizing some of our structure, and we have recently developed some subcommittees. And one subcommittee that I believe is probably the most in line with IVCSD's goals is our Justice Subcommittee. So our Justice Subcommittee, again, it's very new, so we haven't done many activities within that realm, but it is focusing very broadly on public safety. And we also are really hoping to kind of enhance reformative justice and the options that not just youth, but everyone within this area has for restorative justice over some more punitive measures that we have learned when it comes to substance use are just not that effective. So also another way to get involved is really partnerships and providing programming. So an example of that is with the IV Teen Leaders. Like I mentioned before, they were really active over summer. We were able to meet with different community leaders and things like that. So that's just an example of one way of programming. If there is something that you are looking for youth involvement, then the IV Teen Leaders are a great resource for that. They're getting really busy with school and everything like that, but they have still been managing to come and stay involved with us. So we also are trying to work with the idea of doing workshops for parents. A lot of our parents in this community have lots of different things that they're interested in just learning and knowing about, because they're not living in the most traditional sort of community. And so we want to really continue engaging our parent population as well. We also were hoping, which again, because of COVID, it didn't quite work out, but something that we're really hoping to do is to have some community forums, which, you know, we would open up to the entire public to talk about any kind of issue really that doesn't just involve substance use, because not everyone wants to always talk about that, but mainly also, like I had mentioned, aligning with public safety and kind of the view on how that needs to look in the Isla Vista community. And then any other kinds of workshops or events or things like that. This coalition, you can think of it as really something that is meant to fill in gaps and support. We are not necessarily starting many things from the ground up, because there's already so much amazing work that's being done within the Santa Barbara community. So our role, because we are also very localized to focus on just Isla Vista and Goleta, our role is very much a supportive role. So if there are events or ideas that people have within the community, that is something that I welcome you to reach out to me to see if there's some way that we can support it, whether that's, you know, financially, with volunteers, with helping plan. This coalition, I can't emphasize enough the emphasis on community. The only way that we're able to achieve our goals is because of all of these partners that we have here who have been involved, who have been answering my emails and getting involved with me in ways that I'm requesting. And also this presentation that you all have allowed me to come here and do. This is just one example of a way that this coalition truly welcomes collaboration within this community. So I included my email right there just in case there's any questions or comments that anyone has for me. But that's just about all that I have for my presentation. So I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen now.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation, Demi. It was an absolute pleasure to meet with the Isla Vista team leaders this summer. I think Jonathan and I can both attest to the fact that we are there presenting about local government, which is a pretty wonky topic. And they had some really incredibly detailed and good questions for us. And we got to learn a lot from them as well about what it was like to grow up in Isla Vista and what their day-to-day needs and challenges are. And so really appreciate you inviting us to present at that group, and really appreciate your presentation here today about the coalition. I want to open it up for board members to ask if there are any questions for Demi.
I'm sorry, I'm not finding out how to raise my hand.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you for your indulgence. Super cool. I really enjoyed your presentation a lot. And I'm just wondering, it's been a long time since I lived in Isla Vista, but I'm assuming that you have a lot of different languages and multiculturalism. And so are you doing services bilingually in Spanish? And then I also am thinking about some of the kids who have parents who are substance abusers and are suffering through the difficulties that occurs, and wondering, are you doing anything in support of people who are maybe in challenging households?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for those questions. Those are great questions. The first one, as far as offering bilingual services, so the majority of the current youth and families that we work with, if they do speak a second language, it's typically Spanish. And that's something that I will say in general, the St. George Youth Center has always made a priority, because so many of the families that we work with, their first language is Spanish, and that's what they feel most comfortable in. That's something that we definitely are always pushing to. If we receive materials for an event and they're only in English, we're certainly going to ask for them in Spanish as well. And something that we're also trying to explore is in order to kind of increase especially parent involvement, is offering some translation services during our meetings. But we also hope that anytime we do workshops with parents in the general community, we definitely are making sure that we include an option for Spanish speakers. And the webinar that I had mentioned we did with YouthWell, that was an example where they did have a Spanish translator on that call as well, so that people were able to watch without that particular language barrier. And then your other question about, kids and their parents. So like I mentioned before, this coalition in particular is not a direct service provider. However, because we have such a large network of service providers, it is pretty easy for us to be able to make essentially referrals. If we have families or parents or something who were coming to us looking for resources, even if this coalition doesn't provide those, our members certainly do. So that's something that I also try to really stay on top of in my position, is what resources are actually out there, what kinds of services do we have out there, and then also just kind of advocating for bringing more services to Isla Vista and to the Goleta community. There's a couple of initiatives going on right now within South County that I'm trying to stay involved with, and really always pushing the idea that don't forget Isla Vista and whatever sorts of services are being brought. So yeah, I would say that that's something that I really got from the St. George Youth Center, is just the huge emphasis on advocating for our families here. And that's in all sorts of ways, whether that's connecting them with whatever resources we know of or helping them in other ways. That's a huge emphasis that this center has, and that's something that has really carried over into this coalition.
I think too, I have been exposed to a lot of the recovery communities and the 12-step meetings and so forth. And there are just so many amazing people who are active in those communities. And it seems like exposing some of our younger people in Isla Vista to some of those activists would be really fantastic.
Definitely. I am really hoping, I mentioned that we we have a lot of involvement with UCSB's alcohol and drug program, and they have their Gauchos for Recovery program. And during that webinar that we had hosted or sponsored back in March, I believe that they had a student who was in that group speak about her own recovery. And so that's a really interesting element to this, because even though we focus on prevention and we're not necessarily dealing with people already experiencing substance use disorders, it all goes hand in hand. And I agree, bringing some of that awareness to our youth is really important. So that's definitely a topic that I've been kind of bouncing around, is how can we partner with, you know, Gauchos for Recovery or some of the other networks too in Santa Barbara. So yeah, that's a great idea for one of these events that I'm hoping we can finally have now that we're not so limited with COVID.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Demi. It's great to see you. Thank you for your presentation tonight. I think for many of us, we know that issues with drug and alcohol misuse are one of the most significant types of issues that we experience in Isla Vista. It's been that way for decades. And I think now with a focus on harm reduction and public health, we are moving in the right direction, realizing that this is something that exists in especially college-age populations, but also when you have a residential community with youth that are growing up as next door neighbors of college students, you really have to look at how to address that in a way that reduces harm and promotes the most healthy possibilities for folks. And I think when I first moved to Isla Vista, and for many of us, like alcohol and drug issues were dealt with more of as a crime or in a public safety enforcement manner. And now we're really focusing on this health side. And I could say that's the same for kind of how growing up it was presented in education, whether it's in junior high or high school. For many of us, it was not this harm reduction approach, but rather don't do this or this will happen to you. And I'm curious about when you're working with kids and parents, is like the harm reduction approach kind of just standard operating procedure now, or are you kind of still experiencing a transition? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. So I would say before I was in this position, I actually was a case manager with a homeless shelter in Santa Barbara. And I was then kind of really made aware of trauma-informed care and how important those are when you're dealing with any aspect or any level of substance use and substance abuse. So that's a great question. I try when I am working with our youth, I really come from that trauma-informed perspective and trying to promote harm reduction in ways where I'm constantly emphasizing to them that when we talk about substances or people using substances, we want to move away from the idea of criminalizing and stigmatizing them. So that's something that, that's exactly why I also don't make everything that they do just focused around substances, because, you know, like you said, there is still a very large focus and kind of connection between substance use and the criminal justice system and that sort of thing. So that's something that I definitely try to move away from with them, is letting them kind of explore ways where, you know, they can avoid substance use without judging people who are using certain substances, or without also thinking that you know, it's something that deserves you to just be thrown into prison. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And that's something that can be really tricky when you're working with youth and trying to get those messages across, because just like the rest of us, they've grown up with messaging that, drugs are bad, people who do drugs and drink irresponsibly all need to go to jail. And that's kind of a lot of the messaging that they still hear, and that's kind of accepted within mainstream culture. We are really glad though, because the grant that our coalition has to do all of our activities is now being managed by the CDC, and they have been really, really pushing an emphasis on public health, as well as addressing things like ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences. And those are all little bits and pieces that I've really been trying to incorporate in any kind of work I do with them, so that it's not just me sitting there telling them, don't do drugs, don't do this. It's more of, what other things are there out there for youth to do? What can you spend time doing that doesn't involve these other possibly very dangerous things? And then also just kind of opening them up again to some of those more kind of hard to understand topics that adults, including myself, take a long time to understand, like harm reduction. I don't exactly frame it as harm reduction to them just yet, but it's something that I take those ideas and weave that into any conversations we have around substance use. And for the most part, they're pretty receptive to it. We still have to sometimes fight the stigmas, because they, again, they're youth that have been growing up with a lot of messaging around them and different things they get from social media. So they definitely still have some of these kind of misperceptions around substance use. So we just have to be careful, because, they're also youth. So I have to be really careful about what I say. But overall, I would say that they've been really receptive to it. They are also intelligent. Like, Spencer had mentioned before, he was surprised. I was so surprised at some of the questions that they were able to come up with. So overall, it's been really not as challenging as you might think, working with this particular age group and discussing some of these touchy topics. It's really just all about the nuance, and again, just fighting some of those misperceptions and some of those stigmas that we really, really want to avoid, especially in this community, because I emphasize to them all the time that we don't want them to see college students as bad people. That's not the community that any of us really want to see. And so those are kinds of the ideas that we have to play around with a lot.
Got it. Well, thank you so much for all of your work. You're making a difference.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Well, not seeing any, I just want to add on my praise to the work that you're doing, Demi. I think, like Director Bertrand is mentioning, I think just about everyone who grew up in the last 20 years grew up with similar messaging around when we were teens. It was kind of a binary. It was either sort of the DARE model of don't do drugs, drugs are bad, drugs will hurt you and you'll go to jail, or the perverse side effect that creates, which is sort of excess and indulgence, and that sort of duality hasn't suited us well as a society. And I'm really admirable that you're able to have these conversations about tough issues with teens, but also not just have those conversations, also help expose them to the great things about our community and help build those bonds between them and between others in the community, for them to get connected. We've heard so much throughout the pandemic that substance use issues thrive in isolation. And what you're doing is you're connecting people. You're connecting people to each other and to the outside community. And I'm just really in admiration of all the work that you're doing, and can't sing the praises enough.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you all for your questions. And thank you once again for having me here to shed some light on our coalition. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. And if you'll stick for a second, I'm going to open up public comment to ask if there's any members of the public who would like to speak on the Healthy Communities 805 presentation. All right, I'm not seeing any public comments. Thanks again, Demi, for your presentation, and I know we'll be in touch with more continued collaboration.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're going to move to the next item on our agenda, which is item 4.3, Halloween 2021 debrief. And I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan to introduce this item.
Cool. Let me get it up. We have some in the waiting room. Okay, well, I'm gonna be looking away from you guys on the other screen. So this is just a recap on Halloween from last, how long has it been now? A week only. It's only been 10 days since Halloween. This is a letter we prepared, Spencer and I, on the background and the safety and what we did. I wanted to go and show some pictures of our events first, just to get that through. Here's a picture of our group at the co-op, or some of the group right at the end of the event. This is a picture of midway through, and here's one right at the beginning, maybe before it started. People started getting there, or right at the beginning. So we had a lot of people come. I think around 100 people came to the costume contest. So, but not everyone signed up for the contest. But these are just some pictures of our participants. We had some kids come and some adults. So it was actually a lot of fun. And then some pictures, we had the costume contest as well. Some winners. You had people of all ages, over 17, some teens, and some kids under 11. So yeah, and I don't think we got pictures of Hunt the Loop, unfortunately, up onto our page, but from what I heard, there was a lot of people who were there, and we did have a winner for the prize of Hunt the Loop as well. So it was those were some of the pictures. You can go on to the Ivy Halloween is our new Instagram page. We'll be able to keep it now for the foreseeable future, as we do future events in Halloween, and people can come back and see what we've done. So we're hopefully making this the official social media page for Ivy Halloween in the future. That was one of the good outcomes. Unexpected. I think that was Director Bertrand's idea to do this one. So it was a good outcome of the planning. So this is just a background of Halloween, of how it's historically grew to such a big event with safety issues and over policing, and how in 2013 that was a pivot change, where a lot of policymakers and organizations changed a lot of what was being done, and it led to Halloween becoming, like it says here, not much of an event at all anymore. A lot of the enforcement continues, and we did hear a lot of that in this, in the last month from the community on that issue of what's going on with the continued presence and enforcement when we think nothing's going on. This is just some of the statistics that from the sheriff's office that were compiled, and the crowd estimates. So no crowd since 2016, even 2014, 2015 crowds pretty minimal, and arrests and citations just consistently going down year after year. So it's a good situation. The community stepped up, and also made there's less issues. The Keep It Safe, Keep It Local campaign was also something that was community initiated that helped with this. But yeah, this is just another report on what we did. It was a great weekend. Other IVRPD did lots of events too. UCSB had the concert as well this year. But we were very proud of the work we did with 3 events that we helped host. So the costume contest, the pumpkin contest, and the Haunt the Loop with AS. So I think it's a good foundation, our grant program, our grant idea. So, that was what we did this year, was our community facilities power, allowing for the grant program. We don't, just for the public to know, we don't have the power to adopt ordinances relating to law enforcement and public safety. We can't direct those agencies. But we have done work to try to, again, steer these festival weekends, I guess we can call them, to being safer with alternative events and better planning. So, like it's, there was a lot of community concerns still around Halloween response and positive reception to some of the things we did and other agencies did. So this is just a debrief of, that's what happened. That's how that's kind of the sentiment we got in the community, and what should we keep in mind to look at doing next. And we can plan a year ahead for next Halloween. We can start thinking about it now of what we want to try to make happen next year.
Well, thank you for that presentation, Jonathan. I think it sums up the weekend pretty well. I just first, before we get started on the discussion, want to say a big thank you to Jonathan, to Sydney, the rest of our team, as well as the Isla Vista Food Co-op for all the work that they put into the Halloween costume contest. That was an incredible event. Also, a big thank you for Ethan for emceeing the event. Did a really great job. And it was just such a great time. It really, I think, in a lot of ways, reminded me everything that I love about Halloween. It's been weird living here over the last 5 years when Halloween doesn't really happen, but we kind of got some of that magic back, and it was so great to see all of the effort that folks put into their costumes and just having a good time. So really appreciative of that partnership. I want to open it up for the board if there's any questions or comments from the board. Ethan, is that a hand? Go ahead, Director Bertrand.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll echo your thanks for our awesome team and for our partners. We really did something special on Halloween weekend. And as I've shared with a few folks, our Halloween event was probably the first time that I've celebrated Halloween in Isla Vista on actual Halloween weekend, just because I've gone out of town. I've gone to downtown Santa Barbara, maybe even Goleta, places where things were going on over the past several years. So it was really nice to have events where people could celebrate Halloween within Isla Vista. And UCSB has done an incredible job for many years with on-campus events, but even that has historically been just focused on UCSB students, which obviously that serves a big, but there are more Isla Vista residents than just UCSB students. So I think we saw folks having a good time. I made it a point to go up to a lot of the folks at our events, especially some of the folks who were not students, to learn more about how they found out about us and what they liked about Halloween in Isla Vista. And I found that a lot of folks just wanted to be together in community. And that's something that has been lacking for years. When speaking with folks around the community, we do continue to hear concerns about the over-policing of the festival weekends, Halloween especially. I have a new apartment mate this year who's living in Isla Vista for the first time, and just seeing how Isla Vista transforms during Halloween weekend was a big shock to them, and they were asking me about it. And for me, that kind of just was a great reminder about how for folks who are coming into the community for the first time and seeing the community just shut down in a way where folks can't really gather, it doesn't feel safe, that type of thing. It is something that still rubs a lot of residents the wrong way, and something we have to continue to work on. But that being said, this was a great start to that. I hope that in the years to come, we can continue to build programming that really brings our downtown business area alive, which is great for residents and great for our business partners. We saw what we could do with just activating one private space and turning it into a public space. Imagine if we partner with even more businesses and organizations to really bring the loop alive for a Halloween festival. There's a lot of opportunity. So I'll stop there, but just lots of gratitude for everyone. We did some good work.
Thank you for that, Director Bertrand. Director Topliff, go ahead.
And you'll see, I figured out how to raise my hand. So I want to say that I thought it was great that we did that. I was out there on Sunday for the Haunting the Loop, and we had, I think, more candy than we needed, which is not always a good thing. And also, when you're starting something, you probably spend more money than, the turnout justifies. So, there's always that concern about doing the right thing with your resources. But that said, I think it's really important and powerful and strong that we're trying to make a stand about Halloween. I think, for one, a majority of our population is young people who are really struggling with identity issues and breaking free from their parents and trying to figure out who they are. So I think the whole thing about costuming and alternate identities is a very important thing at that point in your life, and to be able to have an environment where you can express it and explore it and celebrate it safely, I think is super important. And I was very impressed with this board because I think that a real effort was made to do this thing without a lot of lead time and just a lot of confidence and belief. And I think that it was really pulled off very well. And so I was very impressed.
Thank you for that, Carrie. I think that's very well said. Are there any other board members with comments or questions they'd like to share? Director Flaherty, go ahead.
Yeah, mine's a bit more brief, but it goes off of that last sentiment where I was really inspired by how quickly we could put together events for Halloween weekend. And it makes me really excited for what the possibilities are for next year and the years to come when we do have more time to plan. And we already have traditions set up that we can build upon. And so that makes me really excited when looking at the future.
Thank you for that, Director Flaherty. Director Aguilar.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say thank you to the folks who worked on this for starting something new. And I guess, Catherine, you kind of led into my question, which is just that if anyone who worked on this has any short senses about what they are imagining for the future based on what they experienced this past year, what they experienced in the past month, what are some like lofty goals, or what is a small goal that we can imagine and start working on with the next year?
I mean, something we almost did was close Embarcadero Del Mar for Deltopia 2020. We were moving towards that already, and we were working on the permit. And we only had, 2 months lead time when we were trying to do that permit. So, that could, I think what Ethan said is if we had the whole loop events and a street shutdown would help make that festival aspect.
Yeah.
I think that's
even the co-op street. It looked like if we had been able to shut down that street where the co-op had, I mean, that's smaller, but it would have been cool.
I think that's a great idea. And to echo something that Carrie mentioned, we were very fortunate to be able to pull all of these things together within just about a month's time. And I know that we could, there were so many ideas that we had along the way that we realized we could have implemented or could implement in the future with more lead time and more planning. the idea of the street closure. I know another one that we had considered was some sort of a silent disco. I think both those ideas are great. I love the idea of activating the Loop community for just gathering and costumes. One of the challenges that I foresee is that the festival ordinance that the county has is very restrictive over what's allowable during the weekend. And we definitely ran into that when we were talking about the silent disco idea. And I think our friends at the Recreation and Park District also ran into that challenge as well, because the ordinance is written in such a way as to where any outdoor gathering that has music or dancing after 6 p.m. is not allowed, which is, I think, not what the Board of Supervisors intended when they passed the ordinance. I remember being there with some of you in 2017 when they amended the ordinance to include new dates to bring them in line with what the dates for Halloween and Deltopia were going to be. And we received comments from multiple supervisors that they were very supportive of alternative programming during these festival weekends. So I don't think it's their intention to try and squash that alternative programming, but I wonder if there are things that we can do to try and make it easier for organizations like ours and like the Rec and Park District, other groups in the community that want to host fun and safe gatherings that are alternative programming, to make it a safer community and give folks something to do. I'm wondering if there's things we can do to try and make that easier. Director Deschler.
Yeah, I would just say, I think that is a very simple word change in the legislative language that just says something about a sponsored program by a responsible entity or something like that. The university had the same situation. We were looking at various events that we realized we would be not in compliance with the festival ordinance. So I definitely think that's worth bringing to the County Board of Supervisors' attention to see if we could get some amended legislative language.
Thanks for that comment, Kirsten. Other comments from board members? Well, I'll add another thing, sort of building off of what Director Bertrand was mentioning. The most common concern that I hear from residents is both surprise and then frustration with the large law enforcement and sort of transformation that the community has every single Halloween year, which is not really commensurate to the scale of what happens during Halloween. I really resonate with what you mentioned, Director Bertrand. I don't think I've ever celebrated Halloween in this community the entire time I've lived here because it hasn't existed. But what residents do know exists is that there will be many law enforcement officers present in the community, and a large presence, and there will be fencing, there will be restrictions, and I don't think that creates the safe environment that we're hoping for. And so I'm hoping too that moving forward, we can continue to really be a voice for advocating for reductions in those presence during these weekends where there is a large amount of upstaffing. I think that it makes our community feel safer when they feel like they are trusted and not being watched over, everywhere that they go. I think it's just a broader component of building more trust between our community and our law enforcement agencies. So I would really advocate for us to get ahead of that, even though we're only basically 10 days away from Halloween of last year, but to really make that a call, a challenge that we issue as a board for our partners at the university and the county moving forward for next year. Director Deschler?
Yeah, okay. I agree with what you're saying. I think that we're struggling on the campus with this idea of, how much is too much. And And we're also struggling with this idea of, when do you affect cultural change? Like, how do you assess that cultural change has happened? And I think what I would just say about police response is that we need to remember, I'll say for myself and to others who are interested, we need to remember why there's a police response in Isla Vista in the first place. And that was because many years ago, people outside the community came into the community and did really bad stuff. And that's why we have a police presence in Isla Vista. And I do think that, as we have seen over the last 7, 8 years, the community has really stepped up and has created alternative programming and has created a wonderful community that cares about each other and respects each other. And the events that now happen now are not the same as happened many years ago. So I think that it is really important that we all the entities that are involved in Halloween and other events, look at ways in which we can look at the past 7 years and realize maybe the things that we've been doing don't work anymore. And I can tell you that is happening on our campus. And there has been some sense of reflection of, are all the things that we're doing necessary now? And so I think this is a good exercise for all of us to go through. But I do think it's also important to remember why there has been a police presence, because there was a need many years ago. And maybe that need isn't the same as it is now, but I think that I would just like to say that I think we should remember why there is in fact a police presence, because at one point it was necessary. That's just my opinion.
Thanks, Director Deschler. I'll go to Director Freeman and then Director Bertrand.
So I guess something that I think is worth contemplating is the idea that culture, tradition isn't something that it's not something that is necessarily externally imposed, and it's not something that is easy to bootstrap. It's something that comes over time from a community looking back at who it had been and doing things that are similar to that in order to maintain a form of identity. I say that because I feel like there's this, in the discussion that happens around what about Isla Vista and Halloween, is that it's some kind of almost like self-fulfilling prophecy, that if it weren't for the university and the county, the sheriff's department all doing everything that they can in order to stop Halloween from happening, it's just going to blow up and happen again. Or that the community has spent 7 years working on trying to suppress and change something, and that now the question is like what do we need to continue doing? Halloween died years ago, and it's not coming back. I don't understand, honestly, why we keep having this conversation in this form. So if you look at other colleges, some of them have large events. I happen to know a little bit about the University of Illinois, which has a big event on St. Patrick's Day. They don't have, as far as I know, a big event on Halloween. We don't have a big event on St. Patrick's Day. Now, if you could argue, Chicago cares somewhat more about St. Patrick's Day. There's no reason why they wouldn't care about Halloween, right? Like Halloween, some of the arguments here about why Halloween is important to that Carrie was making, might be important to people around here. That's just around college students everywhere. And so it's just like Halloween, when I was a student, was almost crazy ridiculous. I mean, it was, and I would hear stories when I was a student of what it was like before, but that it was a relatively, honestly, a short period of time to manage to just kind of obliterate it. And it's, I feel like if you were to think about the idea now of like, oh, well, maybe 3 years from now, suddenly there would be a bunch of people coming, people from outside the community coming, people. There's no, I just don't believe it. So and from the perspective of, some people consider this, for what it's worth, to be like a devastating. And I sometimes have brought up, the business community locally, which was already a very seasonal, in a very seasonal situation of not having really anyone around over holiday breaks, not having anyone around really at all over like December, things like that. They actually felt that Halloween was one of their big profit points, they're very sad about the idea that it's not a thing anymore. When you talk to them about the idea of large events, they always would bring up things like, which I've said to, I think even this full kind of board before, but if you were to go to a random city somewhere and say to them that we have this problem, which is a very large number of people keep showing up and they have nothing to do. What do we do in order to make it so that people never show up again? They would look at you like you're crazy, because they do everything they can to try to figure out how to make their location something that's attractive for people to show up to. And they would be like, why don't you just provide them something to do? The time for alternative programming was when we had an audience. Now if you were to just not provide the alternative programming, just nothing would happen. And so it's just, that's it. And that might be, I guess that's fine now. But I'm just so confused in some senses where the thought process is still going with relation to what we're even trying to accomplish at this point. I do like, Spencer, I think as in previous times almost made it sound like maybe the goal is to try to reinvigorate something, but do it cleaner, which I think is great. But in the meantime, it's like whatever police resource allocation is going into this just seems to be a waste of money and a waste of community belief in policing. That waste of money leads to an inability to have local government that's well organized in strong ways, because that was one of the big limiting factors, for example, in the city, things like that. I don't know. I just really wanted to kind of put that out there. Like, I don't think Halloween is a thing anymore. So.
Thanks for that, Director Freeman. Director Bertrand, you're next.
Yes, thank you. Well, a few points. First, on Director Freeman's comments, as far as what our vision is, you bring up a good question. And for me, obviously, I think Halloween is cool and I want people to have a good experience, but it's bigger than that for me. For me, I want people to feel safe every weekend of the year in Isla Vista. And right now, there are 2 weekends that feel really, really unsafe. And the reasons that they feel really, really unsafe are because of responses that maybe were needed in the past, but are not reflective of the current community situation and needs. So that's my bigger picture concern. And how do we fix that? I see by creating positive events and things for people to do. But a few other things that I initially wanted to comment on, to piggyback off of what Director Deschler was saying, just about the previous situation in Isla Vista. One thing that came to mind for me too was thinking about how a lot of the reasons for the very heavy response from local government and the university and all sorts of partners is that landlords at the time weren't stepping up. There was a lot of neglect from landlords who are providing the properties where so many of these issues were occurring. And for year after year, there would be these issues and landlords would not step up. And I wonder, I think as we have this discussion going forward about how we change the culture, that's an important stakeholder group for us to speak with as well. I would hope that maybe now we may have some change in leadership or management practices where there are some folks who are willing to really be part of the positive change. Because I think if we have not only residents stepping up, but also property providers, that's how we can get closer to that culture change. And it's not all on them by any means, but I think traditionally that's one group that wasn't engaging so much, where we would like to see more engagement in the future. And I had another point, but it's escaped me, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Director Bertrand. And I wanted to share one thing. Jonathan, do you think you could pull up the chart of the statistics over the years? So, not to pick on you, Director Deschler, but you asked the question, what does culture change look like? Jonathan, can you scroll up a little bit so we can see the whole bar graph? So I submit to you that this is what a culture change looks like. We're seeing decreased arrests and citations, but above and beyond that, I think the best measure that we really have for how healthy a weekend is are people going to the hospital? And for the last 3 years, we've seen not a single person going to the hospital. I remember when I first came to the community in 2016, parts of 2017, there would be weekends where there would be, just in a random normal weekend, upwards of 15 medical calls. And you can see them because you can track them on your phone whenever they get dispatched from the county fire. And we're not seeing that anymore. For the vast majority of people that do live in our community at this point, they have never known a Isla Vista where Halloween has gotten out of control. In fact, even the entire time that I've lived here, I haven't really ever seen it get out of control. Even in 2016, where I think it was kind of a transition period where more of the partying was underground, we still saw a very low number of arrests and citations comparatively to what it's been in the past. And we also didn't see a crowd as reported by the sheriff's office. So, I just put that out there because I think that as we think about moving forward and what type of a community we want to see, I think that there are some tough decisions that we all have to look at in terms of how resources are allocated. And I know this has been something that personally I've been beating the drum for years. I wrote an op-ed in the Independent in 2017 saying, how could Halloween in Isla Vista be different if we differently prioritized our resources? And it's not an original idea for me. Many before have asked the same question. But to Director Freeman's point, it does feel like we have the same conversation year over year. And I think that it's just time for us to really start to have more tougher, direct conversations about issues like this, because it doesn't make our community feel safe during these festival weekends when they see fencing, when they see upstaffing. From what Jonathan and I were told in the Halloween planning meetings, the total number of law enforcement officers that were on call for this weekend was 96 between UCPD and the sheriff's office, about roughly equal numbers from both of those agencies. And I just don't feel that that is a good use of public tax dollars at this point. And I see another hand from Director Bertrand, and then I'll go over to Director Topliff.
Yes, thank you. One more thing I wanted to add is part of our district's program this year was, again, a lot of heavy public communication. So really want to commend staff for that. We had door hangers on every door in Isla Vista that listed not only our programs, but also a lot of the just information on the rules of the road for the weekend. Additionally, we had very heavy social media ads on that as well, so that folks had the information about what was expected for the weekend and how they could stay safe. So I really want to commend our team for that, because regardless of how we feel about what the current situation is and how we might want to change it, we were at least very effective in making sure that everyone understood what would be happening. So I think we did a really good job there.
Great point, Director Bertrand. Thank you. Director Topliff.
I just wanted to say that I think these statistics are very helpful to us in starting a dialogue about law enforcement presence, because nobody wants to waste resources. And if they're not needed, they're not needed, and they're not needed.
Thanks, Director Topliff. Were you done with your comment? Did you freeze?
That was it.
Oh, okay.
Short and sweet.
Hard to tell sometimes. Yeah. Okay. I'll go to Director Freeman and then Director Dash.
What I'd be interested in having, I don't know if this is at all easy to obtain, but and particularly because it's kind of a decentralized effort, but I'd be interested in seeing this kind of graph, but then overlaid with the additional expenditure that is put into policing each year. And then I'd also, I don't know if it's possible, but because there was such a big shift because of the 2014 the Deltopia incidents. I would be interested in going back an additional 2 years and seeing the data kind of to get a better running start into all of the big shifts. You can kind of get a feeling of whether or not the government expenditure, as we've been discussing here, has actually managed to track at all the actual shifting scope of what the problem might be.
We actually,
even though we're all loving these graphs.
We have that. I can get that to you. Some of them, some of the numbers I can get to you, but I think we can do a better, fuller analysis. But I can send you some of that now. I'm looking for it.
Cool. Thanks for that, Director Freeman. Director Deschler, go ahead.
I was just going to echo what Carrie said, and she said it so well. I do think it's real. No one wants to spend resources in a scarce situation. I would hope, I would encourage our staff and others to engage with county leadership and university leadership sooner rather than later, to start talking about these conversations while the information is fresh, while people are looking at the fact that there were, single-digit arrests, no one going to the hospital, and these kinds of things, because this is how we will, if I think that if the board can engage county and university leadership on these issues moving forward, that maybe we can make Halloween look a little bit different for next year. And but I do think that it has to happen sooner rather than later, because the county and the university and CSD and others meet about Halloween like 3 weeks before Halloween, maybe a month before Halloween. By that time is too late. Everyone is basically already have their operational plans. It's really is probably 3 months to 4 months ahead of time, where I know police are already doing planning. So I would just really encourage us to think about a strategy of engaging with county and university leadership for next year's Halloween, focusing specifically on how to create a different policing environment.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler. I think that's a very good point for us to start early, and while the memory of the good things about this year's Halloween are still fresh in mind. Any other comments from directors? Cool. Well, I think it's a good time to open up public comment. If there are any members of the public that wish to speak, you can do so by putting something in the chat or hitting the raise hand button. I believe on Zoom, or if you're on your phone, you can do that by pressing *6. Is that correct? Okay. Okay, I see a request from Justin in the comments. Go ahead, Justin, to be followed by Mark.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for all the comments. One thing I don't think that was mentioned was the haunted house put on by the Parks and Rec District up at Estero Park. I attended that, and it was a really good event. Well attended and a lot of fun. And so that paired with all of your programming, I think really helped. There's been a lot of mention of over policing. I'm not going to argue that, I guess. I just want to throw a couple things out there. We had 3 deputies working on Halloween night in Isla Vista. 3. We wrote 18 citations this weekend, which was down significantly from last weekend. So I don't know really how it's viewed as over policing. Maybe it's that ordinance that's in effect. But we really did not upstaff like in past years. The upstaffing that we did do, I will say, it was not 3 to 4 months in the making. Those decisions were being made just the weekend before. We actually had a smaller plan going into it, but the weekend before was really, really busy. I was out there both Friday and Saturday nights, and we were overwhelmed with the staffing we had. And so the decision was made to bring in a couple extra people for that Halloween weekend, and then nobody showed up. And so we kind of take the approach of better safe than sorry, because we need to be there for public safety. We've seen recently in Los Angeles, and then just in Houston last week, these events that get out of control and don't have the personnel, and people get injured and killed, and that's not what we want. And so we had been working with our intel unit and seeing some of these posts about large parties, and we didn't want to get that 10,000, 20,000 people coming from Los Angeles. So we have to be prepared to respond to that. When we saw that wasn't happening, everybody was sent home very early in the night. We're talking 9, 10 o'clock, they were sent home. So we're there to respond, but it was not a huge police presence. I don't think you're going to see those pictures in the paper of 25 sheriff's deputies on Del Playa with no people. We just didn't have that this year. So the same conversations you guys are wanting to have are already happening behind the scenes. We need to be there for public safety, but we don't want to waste the dollar as much as anybody else does. So those conversations are already going on. I just want people to know that.
Thank you for your comment, Justin. Up next, we have Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say, just that I appreciate the, Deputy Schroeder's added nuance to all of this, but yeah, to just kind of echo what's been said, that, I think we need to start transitioning out of the policy of 7 years ago into the policy of the 2020s for Isla Vista, and really thinking about like, what is the future of Isla Vista rather than how are we still mitigating the past. So just wanted to echo that and appreciate you all for thinking about that.
Thank you for that comment, Mark. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. And I will just add one thing, because I appreciate the clarification from Deputy Schroeder. I know that myself and others on our board sit in the briefings with the sheriff's office leadership and the county leadership and the UCPD leadership, and sometimes the numbers that they share for what they're planning on doing, which the number I had written down was 96. I remember very closely because it was a very high number. I realized that not all of them end up getting deployed. So maybe that's another thing that we can increase the communication on in terms of what actually ended up happening. Because I think that gets lost a lot of the times. And also just when people are walking around and see a number of officers together, they have certain reactions that way. And it's something that we get complaints about. So, but I appreciate the comment. And I also just wanted to add the tragedy that occurred this last week in Houston, I think is such a great example of just everything that we don't want to happen in our community. I think that by contrast, our vision is one where we create organized events that can channel the energy that went into an event like that, but in a way that is much more productive, much more safe, and much more healthy, and doesn't cause harm to others in an organized way. So I appreciate that comment. Any other comments from members? All right, I'm not seeing any other comments. So I think for moving forward for a motion, I think there's two components here. One is for us to start thinking about the future for what we want to do on the programming side for next year. I see that as of paramount importance. And the second, I think, is to begin engaging with local officials about the things that we mentioned in terms of more flexibility for alternative events and a different approach on the public safety front. And so I'm kind of envisioning, on the one hand, maybe us getting an ad hoc group together to start thinking about these things. I don't think it's ever too early. about thinking about the programming side of things. And maybe as far as the engagement goes, I think it'd be good for us to have a letter or a statement sort of putting out our ideals for what we want to see in Halloween. Maybe it's a resolution, and tantamount to that, board members and our staff can start engaging with the partners. Does anyone have any comments or ideas on that they want to throw out? Director Bertrand?
Yeah, so on the former, being the idea of just planning for what the future of programming looks like, I know at our last meeting we created the ad hoc for Deltopia planning, and I think this is very similar to the larger goals with that. So perhaps if we want to merge the work with that group, just to be efficient.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
And I'll also remind everyone that we have one more member to appoint to that.
Yes, that is correct. Director Topliff, go ahead.
Some of the things that occur to me as we have this discussion is that we should make evaluation of the festival ordinance and see what needs to happen there. And then, as I have mentioned before, my appreciation for the Burning Man Festival and the Ranger apparatus that they have set up, and how I think that would be just a beautiful thing we could develop in Isla Vista to be an adjunct to police presence on some of these occasions when really it's de-escalation and listening and cultural sensitivity that's involved. So I would like to just say that I think we have sort of some deeper structural work to do, and that we have time now because it's not happening the week after next. And so I think it would be great to start looking at some of those things so that we can continue to build on this very good start we've made at reclaiming these festivals for our own. I'm not frozen, I'm stopped.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. Any other comments from board members? Well, not seeing any. I think it'd be good for us to make a motion at this point. So I like Director Bertrand's idea about merging and maybe just reconstituting the Deltopia Planning Committee to be festival events or festival weekend events planning. And before we do that, I'll ask again, because I know we have 2 members on the committee now. Is there any board members who are interested in being the 3rd member of that committee?
I would do that.
Okay, awesome. Any other interests? Cool. All right. Well, then I think we'll appoint Carrie as the 3rd member of the committee. And so for a motion, I think the 2 components, well, I don't know if we need a motion on the committee. Maybe just, I guess it's like a reconstituting as the festival weekend committee. And then the second, I think directing staff to work with board leadership to draft a letter for our board to vote on sending to various partners, including the County Board of Supervisors, UC Santa Barbara, and the County Sheriff's Office about our vision for Halloween moving forward. And I see Director Bertrand has a hand, so go ahead.
Yes, so I'm happy to make a motion on the first part of that. Can you remind me if we have a name for this work group or this ad hoc committee?
Spring Festival Ad Hoc was the original name.
Got it. So I would make a motion to direct the Spring Ad Hoc Committee to also work on planning for the next Halloween weekend event in Isla Vista.
Okay. Motion by Bertrand. Is there a second?
Whoops. I'm just wondering if I could make a friendly amendment that we transfigure it to a festival committee.
Excellent. So maybe what I said and rename to be the festival committee.
Yeah, what you said.
Sounds good.
Can I make a friendly amendment too to call it the Festival Weekend Committee? Because I know not everything we'll be doing is in the guise of festivals, and I'm also just conscious of the fact that the festival ordinance is incredibly broad right now. So
Okay.
for messaging purposes, is that friendly?
Yeah, absolutely. So the festival, so summary of the motion is to rename the Spring Festival Committee to be the Festival Weekend Ad Hoc Committee, and to direct this committee to begin working to plan for Halloween programming for 2022.
All right. Motion by Bertrand. Is there a second?
Could I just say one more thing first? Aren't we talking about more than just Halloween? We're also talking about Deltopia?
Per the last meeting action, yes.
Okay, so just to make that clarification.
I think what Director Bertrand's saying is that the committee already has direction to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Is there any other board discussion on the motion? All right. We'll take it to a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Flaherty,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Deschler.
Yeah.
Director Topliff.
Yes.
All right. Motion passes. So then the second aspect of this, I think, is our engagement with our partners and our external communications regarding a letter that we would bring back to our board to vote on that has our vision for what we want to see in the future.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Great. So I know I kind of just rattled that off. Jonathan, do you have, were you able to write all that down and synthesize it?
No, I put direct the committee to draft a letter to partners regarding future of weekend festival regulations, but don't know what else he said.
Is that friendly with the maker and the seconder?
Yes.
Great. Any other board discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote.
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Well, thanks everyone for that discussion. Overall, I'll just close with saying we're really happy to get to dress up and enjoy Halloween and appreciate everyone's engagement in this. Okay, we're going to move to the next item, which is 4.4 updated staff salary ranges.
Okay, give me 1 second to switch my tabs. Okay, so this is simple. This is just to put Sydney's salary range in line with the community center director salary range that the board approved. So that's just like 2 positions in the same title. So just wanted to put those to be equal. So that's the only change.
All right, any questions or comments from the board? I'll just add, I know we had spoken about this when we had the conversation and had a more full board discussion about wanting to update our salary ranges to bring them all in alignment with one another. And I think this is a good step for us to be taking. And the salary range is not the same as anyone's actual salary. It's just the range at which they could potentially receive raises in the future. Okay, I'll open up public comment. Any public comment on this item? All right, not seeing any. Back to the board. Is anyone ready for a motion?
I'd like to move to recommend yes. I'd like to move that we accept the recommendations.
All right, made by Topliff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. If there's no other board discussion, I think we'll go to a roll call vote.
Dr. Brent,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Bertrand,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Deschler,
Yes.
Topliff,
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. So now the last action item we have is the Isla Vista Transportation Town Hall workshop informational item. Are we ready for that yet, Jonathan?
Yeah, we can take it. Sydney's not able to be back yet. She chairs a meeting at 6 once a month, and that's over as of today, but it's her last one. So she's not able to be here. So I can just go over it with you guys.
Sounds great. Go ahead.
All right. Well, this is just a short item. It's just mainly an informational item for the public and for the board to know that on 6 p.m. on November 17th, next Wednesday, we're having the first public workshop of the STEP grant. We are calling it the Isla Vista Transportation Town Hall because that seems like a much better marketing term than STEP grant workshop number 1. But that's what it is. It's the first step of that process. The point of this one is to really kick off the process, to get people involved, to get them informed that it's happening, to generate interest, and to see, who might want to be volunteers, who might want to be involved in another way. It's actually, the marketing has been pretty successful so far for this. We have 18 RSVPs already just off of emails, and we're going to start canvassing and tabling today. It's just started today. And so if that's something the board members are interested to get out there and talk to the community, it would be great to have you there to, we've had already a lot of you do some tabling and all that in the community, and it has been really well received. So we have more opportunities to do that. We've also got our new CSD brochure with all our services, so you can help talk to the community about all the things we provide. So Sydney has organized that with the interns. But yeah, that's what's happening. It's gonna end on Wednesday. We're really doing this to have it be something we record and it can be published then. It'll be translated, it'll have live captioning. So we're making it as accessible as possible. And after the workshop ends, we will then launch the survey, the transportation survey. That's the major feature of the STEP grant. So, and part 1 of the survey, we're going to have a part 2, but that's what's happening. So it's just an informational item. Be sure to sign up. Some of you already have. Let others know, promote, get out the word. We're doing a lot to promote this one, and but it's just the first one. And the second one is really, I would say, the main substance of the engagement, but this is an important one to get people involved and started. We've already had people volunteer to get involved, emailed us after seeing the ad for it. So yeah, just want to encourage you all to engage in this.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Jonathan. And for the sake of the public, can you say again the date and time of the meeting?
Yeah, it's on November 17th at 6 p.m. on Zoom, and the information is on our website. ILAVistaCSD.ca.gov under resources for you, or sorry, under what we are up to. And it says Sustainable Transportation Equity Project. And we set up a web page on our website that includes everything related to this project, even our meeting minutes. As we start having meeting minutes for our project committee, will be posted on here. So we're trying to make the whole process very accessible. And I actually didn't mention this, but two of the questions we're going to ask people at the town hall is, one is, how would you like to be reached and talked to and asked about your transportation needs? So having them help us refine our engagement plans. And then to start from the beginning, to ask the public, what kind of data would you like us to collect as part of this to help draw our conclusions? So we just want to make sure that it's as transparent from the beginning as possible, because a lot of these processes can become, they can become mired in disagreement over things like the kind of data that's collected, for example, or the kind of engagement that was used. So we want to, we have a plan, but we also want to refine the plan by asking the public during this town hall, what works for you? What would you trust? What kind of data do you want to know about?
Excellent.
And people can submit a public comment on this website. So if they can't come, if they go to the link that the agenda has, there's a transportation and mobility public comment form that they can submit to us. That's just on that page in Spanish and English.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that update, Jonathan. Great to hear about this. You can definitely count me in for some door knocking. I'm ready for it. I'll ask from our board, are there any questions on this item? All right, well, seeing none then, I'll ask the public, any public comments or questions on this item? All right, seeing none, I think we'll receive and file this report, and looking forward to seeing folks online next Wednesday. Now we're going to move to reports. First, we'll start off with reports from members of the board. Any board members have reports they want to share? All right, not seeing any. We'll move to reports from committees. Any committee reports to share? All right, not seeing any committee reports. We'll go to report from district council.
No reports tonight.
All right, we'll go to report from general manager.
I do have a report. I just closed my tab. Let me reopen it. Okay, so I already talked to you about the STEP grant engagement, but that's the big focus of Sydney's community engagement work right now. But it is really great. It's just helping refine and sharpen the practices for the actual engagement strategies. So we're getting better at it each time in terms of tabling or poster posting or canvassing. So that's going well. Compost Collective, we're just working on some grant reports, and they're going to do their annual report to the board on the program. I think in December is their plan. So they're working towards that. Ivy Beautiful, it's good news. We have 3 workers on crew now. So they're really able to focus effectively on graffiti and trash issues mainly, and some scheduled landscaping. We're working with them on refining their schedule, their cadence, their operation. So it's getting a lot better, and the program has improved significantly in the last 2 months. So I'm really proud of where it's gone since Labor Day. So program's improving, continuing to go. Nothing to report on our public safety programs specifically right now. Our rental housing mediation program, we had a group of students from the community engagement class, which I think some of us are familiar with, reach out to me on what they can do to help kind of do some public assessment of how the program can be improved. So that's perfect. And they already have some ideas for us from surveys they've done already about mediation, on things like maybe hiring peer mediators might be a better way to engage with people, or starting a peer advice forum where you can anonymously ask about how to handle your roommate issues. So getting some good ideas on the mediation program. Our goal is really to get that program used more. And that's their goal as a student, or a class group looking to help us with. So it's great. Community center, we're starting to get some use at the building. We had 2 reservations come in for this week, for the community room, not the larger building, mainly because of concerns with the lack of a floor and acoustics. So people opted for the smaller space that had those things. But it was good. I got to do the visit with them and show them through, and people are very excited to have a space to meet that's free and comfortable. We are in the middle of our hiring process for the community center director. Thank you, Marcos, for volunteering to be on our hiring committee for that. We should be done on the 19th with the decision, and we had 13 applicants for the position. So we are going through that, and we also are posting the, I said I was going to do this 2 weeks ago, but I didn't yet, but we're doing it tomorrow, is the seats on the community advisory board. So I've had a chance to talk with like the permanent positions on there, except us. We have to deal with that too, who we want to put on that. But also, we have the open slots for nonprofit and at-large members, which did expire. They were 2-year terms that we appointed in September 2019. So I had knew they were expired, but then I confirmed again, and so we're going to need to reopen that. We might get the same applicants. Our building assessment for 970 and 976, we're working with the county to nail down a time. We're starting to look at the 29th or the 19th to get that done. So hopefully at our December board meeting, we will have that report ready for us to look over. I already talked about the STEP grant. But yeah, again, if you have ideas for data collection, especially as the board, let me know so that we can, that's what the consultant's focusing on right now, since they're not doing much else in this fall period. And again, the RFP for the parking and planning, they're out, they're published, they're, in all the places they need to be. But just, keep the word out, and we'll be on the soon having to be able to look at the proposals from the parking next Monday is when they're due. So we'll be able to start looking at those pretty soon. In terms of the alternative response to policing program or system that the board has been talking about in the spring, we got a reach out from the AS, Office of Student Advocate General, to work with us on this, and they had done some research as well. So we hadn't worked on that project in a bit, so we're gonna meet with them to see what they're looking at. One thing I wanted to ask is if you all are interested in another retreat semi-soon. It's almost been 1 year. We did it at the beginning of February, so it's getting close to a year if we want to just look at our goals again and some of our priorities. We're in the middle of our audit right now, and it's going well. It definitely is a lot easier the fourth time around, but it's still a lot of work and documents to produce, and COVID filing was a lot harder during COVID than not during COVID. So it just makes things, I cleaned the office at least, trying to clean everything, find everything. So that was a good side benefit. And we're still working through our FMLA issues and our 457B and our credit card. But I'm told they will be resolved by the end of the month and worked and finished. So, but we have some good progress being made on the 457B. We've gotten some proposals from vendors, so we're making progress there. Credit card, we still haven't heard anything from the provider. So I don't know, we might make a decision about moving to a different one at this point if we have to. So that's the report.
Excellent. Thanks for that report, Jonathan. Questions from the board? I see a hand from Director Friedman. Go ahead.
have a comment and a question. Yeah, so sometimes I get inspired by Jonathan's comments to remember to bring something up. I attended the UCSB Basic Needs All Partners meeting last week. And one of the big things I was talking about was the rental housing mediation program that we have. And with the exception of course, Viviana and Katie, no one knew that our program existed. But they were all very excited about it and very excited about what it could do for their people. So continuing to, our biggest issue there is figuring out how to make certain people actually know it exists. A question, did we end up going with the credit card provider? I sadly don't remember which one we were with. Do we go with the one the CSDA was connected with, or?
Yeah, CSDA was connected with a few of them, and the one we picked was the one the state of California sponsors even. So CSDA like had one with a private bank and this one. We went with the state of California.
Okay. I attended the local chapter of the CSDA meeting last night, and the speaker was the financial officer or something for the state CSDA, and he said that if we have any issues, that he could be a point of contact for things such as credit cards for districts. And he was talking, and one of the things that he was specifically talking about was the credit card program that the CSDA works with. I don't know if that's then exactly that same one, but he provided his email address, and so maybe it's worth poking through the CSDA finance rep. But
yeah, I'm down to do anything. We need a credit card. We really do.
All right, thanks for that, Director Freeman. Any other questions from board members? Well, I just want to add on, I'm very happy to hear that we are seeing progress on the Isla Vista Beautiful front, and seeing the reports coming in and more getting done in a quicker time frame is awesome. I love to see it, and very thankful for the continued partnership with the United Way on that. All right, if there's no other questions from the board, then I think we will end the meeting. Our next meeting will take place on November 30th at 6 p.m. on Zoom and or at the community room. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn. I will second the motion to adjourn.
You got it, Jay. I'll second.
All right. Freeman with the motion, Topliff with the second. Any last director comments or public comments? All right. Let's go to roll call vote.
Director Brandt?
Yes.
Director Flaherty?
Yes.
Director Bertrand?
Yes.
Director Aguilar?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Deschler?
Yes.
Director Topliff?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the 30th.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks. Take care.